Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight is a very timely discussion. We are here to have a conversation with the Ministry of Sports. In particular, we're going to be looking at how we can grow the sports sector in Rwanda. We're going to be looking at investments in infrastructure, as well as issues in governance, amongst other things. And most importantly, what needs to be done locally to ensure our sports sector is very competitive, not only regionally, but internationally. I'm very happy to welcome here with us the Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Sports, Mr. Didier Shema Maboko. Very happy to have you on The Square, Permanent Secretary.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. My name is Diana Mpisi, host of The Square. As always, I'm joined by The Square resident panelists. I'm very happy to welcome back, after a brief hiatus, Berna Namata. Berna is a resident panelist of The Square. Great to have you on the show, Berna.
Thank you, Diana.
Also joining us, resident panelist on The Square, Charles Haber, looking very lovely in your green teal Uzi collection shirt. Great to have you on the show, Charles.
Thanks for the compliments. How are you, Diana?
Good.
Nice to have you back.
Yes, indeed. Like we always do before we kick off the show, we're just going to have some brief midweek highlights from The Square resident panelists. Charles, is there anything you'd like to share with the viewers so far?
I think I'm impressed by the way we are waking up, the way the market is waking up, the way the economy is waking up slowly but steadily, with a massive rollout of vaccines and quite a bit of normalcy. I habitually take a walk every Monday to Friday morning, and I walk past, or very many buses drive past me. I see them packed to the brim. I go to restaurants, they're busy, motors are making money. I speak to my friends who own hotels up country. They're getting busy. So I think it's fulfilling that life is returning to normalcy. Certain flight routes that were closed have been reopened. Mm-hmm. The frequency of flights to Kamembe is increasing. So it's impressive. It's fulfilling that life is returning.
Absolutely, and I think this wouldn't have been done with leadership in how we've been dealing with the pandemic, as well as also Rwandans respecting various SOPs over the last year plus.
Yeah, I think the biggest player really has been around vaccines and
Absolutely.
and managing spread. So, but predominantly vaccines. This has been quite impressive.
Mm-hmm. Berna, any midweek highlights?
I think we shouldn't let our guard down. The threat is still there, and we actually still new variants. So we shouldn't let our guard down. But for me, for the last, I think 2 weeks, we've seen several workplaces coming up with feeding rooms for mothers.
Breastfeeding mothers.
Yes. Breastfeeding mothers, which is progress. And we thank everybody who is trying to do that. But I think they can even go further than that and introduce flexible hours for mothers, at least for 1 year. Because even if the baby is being taken care of in the next room, it's not the same if you're together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I would encourage the HR teams to look at flexible hours for nursing mothers.
Yep, absolutely. Kudos to institutions that have effected that, the nursing rooms at the workplace. I think it's very admirable. So we are going to just kick off by reading a couple of tweets. P.S. Thank you very much for joining us. I think it's important to just kick off the conversation by reading a couple of tweets to just have some context in terms of what our viewers expect this conversation to consist of. The first tweet, if you can have it on our screens, is from Jacob Hodari, who says, Honorable Minister, in this case to you, P.S., what is Rwanda's plan in developing talent to win medals in Olympic Games? I also have a suggestion to also widen the net to catch other non-athletic sports like heavy lifting and shooting, where we have veteran soldiers who are known to never miss a target. Okay, yeah, I second that on soldiers not missing a target. Our other tweet coming in is from Inhore. And Inhore Kigali says that I have a suggestion to boost sports in schools, especially to spot and boost talent where we need infrastructure. What if inter-school competitions took place in a single selected school which follows the infrastructure set up, and then the rotation goes on and on? he follows this with his other tweet, same person, who says that in 5 years, we could have 5 schools well equipped with sports facilities and infrastructure, hence improving the level of competence. Better illustration could be shared, but Twitter limits us. That is true. We have some other tweets coming in that I'll also just read. We have a tweet from Anita Mutesi, and Anita asks, would you kindly talk about sports in schools? Growing up, we had sports days, school competitions. Not heard of these in Rwanda. She's not heard of these in Rwanda. How do you develop or discover talent in young ones? As you can see, a couple of the tweets are focusing a lot on talent detection, especially in schools. Our other tweet coming in is from Fred, who says, too much resignation in sports management bodies must be explained. Academies in all categories of sports, future citizenry participations, instead of bigger portion outside recruitment. Close follow-up and criteria verification of PSG Academy recruitment. I think he's talking about the Paris Saint-Germain Academy. Our other tweet coming in from African Patriot asks, states that there must be a policy for deliberate scouting, identifying and nurturing sports talent in primary and secondary schools. This should go hand in hand with creating a sports academy where these talented young men and women can get professional training and coaching. We have our last tweet coming in before we kick off the conversation, coming in from, I think, Frank Chigenza. And his tweet states that, if you could have this on our screens, Frank states that the government has done a fantastic job building sports facilities, but this should be matched with skills acquisition programs to grow local talent. We need to move away from band-aid solutions. Strengthening sports in schools could be a good start. These are the first tweets as we kick off the conversation that we've read. I will now kick off the conversation asking the first question to our Permanent Secretary, Mr. Didier Shema Maboko from the Ministry of Sports. And this is to do with infrastructure and sports strategy, PS. So over the last 2 decades, we've seen hefty investments in the sports sector. If you'll allow me to name a few examples, we've seen the Kigali Arena, with its 10,000 plus seating capacity. We have the Gahanga Cricket Stadium. We also have the Gisagara International Gymnasium and various football stadiums in different parts of the country. Of course, in addition to this, we've seen evidence of Rwanda's determination to become a sports tourism hub. We just had the BAL earlier on a couple of months ago. We had the FIBA Afrobasket that was just concluded last week. And now we're actually, as we speak, Rwanda is hosting the ongoing 2021 African Nations Volleyball Championship. PS, if you can share with us the strategy, if you can start by sharing with us the strategy behind the country's, our sports infrastructural investments, as well as, just give us a brief overview of the success, what's been behind the scenes in Rwanda hosting at least just this year 3 international sports events. Over to you, PS.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we can start by saying that today we are enjoying that investment that has been made by the government of Rwanda in terms of having the sport facilities, sport infrastructures that are on international standards, and which is giving the platform for our youth to practice and also to enjoy their talent in good conditions. And also now with the infrastructures we have, we can now, as I said, we are enjoying that. Now Africans now are coming to our country just to enjoy the facilities we have. You have started like BAL. It was the first edition which was held here in Rwanda. I think if we could not have Kigali Arena, we could not have the BAL starting from Kigali. And also we have this volleyball which is played now. It is the first time since 25 years ago or 50 years ago, because it is played every 2 years. And then today we are playing 26th edition. It is the first time this volleyball African Nations Championship is played in Sub-Saharan countries like Rwanda, because before it was played only in Arabic countries, Maghreb, Tunisia, Morocco, or Egypt. And now we are hosting men and women on same time in Kigali. It shows that the facilities, the infrastructure we have, such as Kigali Arena, is bringing its fruits in a few days of its completion. And what I can say again, the investment of government of Rwanda in terms of sport facilities is just to help the promotion of sport, where we need our youth talented to play in good conditions, in good facilities, where they will express and enjoy their talent. And then we also have the competition, which I played in good condition with standards, and hosting. It will be also the next, after we have talented youth, boys and girls, playing on good facilities. I think that is the strategy behind, and also it shows again that we need to be also a good example in Africa, where we are showing that we are resilient in terms of sports, and we can build facilities in Africa.
Thank you very much. If you could just, I know a lot of people are curious, especially maybe possibly even people outside of Rwanda. How does Rwanda secure these events? Is there sort of behind the scenes marketing? Do people bid for these events? Is it because we have the infrastructure? What is the opportunity for us to secure and host these events, before they actually happen? I don't know if you could shed some light on that.
What I can say is that, first of all, as a Ministry of Sport, we work with the national federations, and the national federations, they are contacted by international federations asking if Rwanda can host the events. And why they ask is because we have the facilities, we have a lot of things they need to have a good standard of the events, and the negotiation start from first the facility you have, and as we have facilities here in Rwanda, people they request, and then the negotiation starts, and then we get the approval easily. And also we have now people starting now to anticipate. They are anticipating, can you host this? Can you accept to have this? So that we can have the event on international standards, and this how it starts. And then also we negotiate to see the possibility to have the event. And as we are looking to be an African sport hub, we also assess, and then also we accept, or we analyze together with the national federations and also in the international federations from the requirement and the standard they want.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Of course, we are going to, put you on the spot, so to speak, later on to answer some of the questions our people on our social media have been asking. Talent acquisition, how do we scout for talent? Is that something Rwanda does? Is this something we're doing in schools? How are we involving schools to, secure and identify talent from a very young age? I think you saw some of the tweets talking about primary schools and engaging sports days and inter-school competitions. We'll come back to that. Before we do, I'd like to hear from the resident panelists. Charles, I'll kick off with you.
Thanks, Dana. And I find myself a little bit in an uncomfortable situation because I know Shema very well. We've served together in sports administration for decades, so he's a good friend, and I congratulate him for the fantastic job that they're doing at the ministry. I want to say two things. One, a reaction to what you said in regards to how Rwanda manages to do these things, and the response that Shema gave the PS. When you go to these international, it's something that's very, very Rwandan. When you go to these international meets, all the other administrators do not want the games to take place in their respective countries, even when they have the infrastructure sometimes better than ours, because it's a loss of opportunity for them to get per diems. In Rwanda, nobody has to tell you to try and get the games to come to your country. It's inbuilt that you want to market your destination as much as possible. And therefore, so it's sort of easy. We used to sit in certain places and in meetings. I remember one time representing the government of Rwanda at the Commonwealth Games Federation Summit in Scotland, and I embarrassed myself because I just wanted the games to come, even though we're not ready. So the way you lobby, so it's in cycles of 4 years. So I say usually the next 8 years are already determined, and then it's the next 12 or 16 years. But so it's just within you, and then you have that drive in you that you want people to come to your country. So Diana, it's in Africa it's different. In Africa, people fight for their stomachs and their shopping baskets more than they think about hosting it. The second thing that I sort of wanted to comment is, I think, no, I'm sure it's an excerpt from one of the famous Nelson Mandela's quotes about the power of sport. And the late Nelson Mandela did speak about sport speaking a language that no politician or religious leader can speak. So the power of sport is so immense
And universal.
yes, that you really cannot afford to ignore it. And you almost see that people who have managed the appeal of the sports mass, they score political and religious gains. I'll give two examples. George Weah, fast forward, became the president of Liberia. Imran Khan, fast forward, became the prime minister of Pakistan as the most famous cricketer, one of the most famous cricketers in the world. So it's something that a politically conscious government like ours cannot afford to ignore, and it's fantastic that the government has put in a lot of effort in their infrastructure. Probably as the show goes along, usually the patience levels drain down quite a bit when it comes to infrastructure versus results. I think that's something that needs to be inculcated amongst the fans, especially the fan base. But those are sort of the two things I wanted to say, Diana.
Thank you. I like your link between sports greats and their transition or their journey to becoming political figures. It's interesting to remember that link. Brenna, over to you.
It's been interesting looking at the traffic that has been coming in related to sports tourism. I had hoped the PS would give us some statistics in terms of
The numbers?
Yes, the numbers, the revenues, gate collections, and maybe to what extent the pandemic kind of dampened the prospects, because I would imagine when the events were planned ahead, nobody had anticipated COVID, so COVID, I think, kind of changed things. But overall, I think we must not lose sight of where we were 15 years ago. I think 15 years ago, if you told anybody that Rwanda would host a basketball tournament, they would think you're nuts. Yeah, so as we see these things happening, I think we shouldn't lose sight of the journey. That's number one. Number two, I think you also see consistency in terms of now we have the infrastructure, let's try and make use of it. As such, the hosting that is happening, which takes me back to the recent press briefing that His Excellency had. Someone raised a question around the sports opportunities. He wanted HE to speak to that. And I think for me that was a very pertinent question. And why? Currently, because of the tourism, most people are looking at the sports and saying people are coming in and going. People are coming in and going, and not so much of what role can I play. And I think which goes back to the questions we are seeing around talent involvement, from schools, the sports competitions that should be happening in schools. So as we continue to host more events, I think it is so important that we don't lose sight of the need to make it more inclusive. It's easier for someone in Kigali to go and attend a match, or because so far I think the most popular are around Kigali, even if we have infrastructure across the country. So how, I think it has to be deliberate. You get people to come in from the different districts to get involved and pick interest. Secondly, I feel that in relation to that, making sure that it's inclusive, sports plays a bigger role beyond socio-economic development. Its role in terms of improving social cohesion, which takes me back to why we need competitions at school level. So far, it is unfortunate that we still have private schools are kind of have some sports calendar. Maybe a Friday or Thursday. Most children in private schools would have a different uniform. We cannot say the same for public schools. And I think that's where,
That's an issue.
Yes, we have a gap. And it's so critical that we prioritize sports the same way we have prioritized unity and reconciliation. Because...
In schools?
Yes, in schools. 10, 15 years from today, there's so much that sports can do for us in terms of social cohesion. So beyond the tourism, I think for me the priority has to be what sports can do in terms of social cohesion. I could give an example. We've seen, around the world, sports figures emerge out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere necessarily, but they've gone through academies, but when you listen to their stories, they are not your ordinary, Yeah, so we have to do more to make sure that it's inclusive
and, really
and prioritize, yes, public schools. The few elites that can afford to send children to schools where there are facilities. I'm just thinking, do we have to also find a tax around making sure that public schools have these facilities? But we have to. It is not a by the way. We have to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Berna and Charles. P.S. I'd like to go back to you. And in going back to you, before we kick off, about the issue of, schools, talent acquisition, what's happening? What's the Ministry of Sports doing in terms of talent detection in schools? But before I go to that, are you available to give us, a few numbers in terms of the returns on investment from all these games, all these international events that have been happening in the country?
For the numbers, I think by now I don't have a real figure that I can now mention. But I think it is time now we have to be informing the public about the return on investment, and when it will be ready, we announce to the public. So for the next point, I think what I can say is that I can assure people that we have talent development programs, but we need also to go in different angles so that everyone will understand, and then we hear about what is done on the ground. Because I can start with an example which shows that in our leagues we always have young talent coming in. They are not nurtured from nowhere, but there are some programs done from schools or out of schools, meaning that we have young talented girls and boys that are nurtured from schools, and then also they can join even clubs and then national teams. So regarding the sport in schools, last year we have the government of Rwanda has approved the school sport policy, which gave the angles or the all elements that are needed in sports in schools, and we think and believe that schools we keep working on sport in schools, but also we want to have the physical education lessons that are also helping in nurturing talent. But we can tell the public that we have sport in schools, but we need also to have responsibility of everyone, which is we are requesting everyone to have a shared responsibility where parents, they support their kids to go to play, where we also need the community to support the kids that have talents to play, and also us as government and the Ministry of Sport, Ministry of Education and the schools, we also give what we can give for the programs and activities because we need also to involve the national federations. Also, always we request them to go back in schools, and then also they help the development of young talents. So we can say that yes, sometimes there are not information about the talent in schools, but we have the competitions, but the format sometimes changes according to the school's calendar, and unfortunately due to COVID pandemic, everything has been stopped. But we think and believe that we can resume very soon because we need to have kids playing, because with sport there are a lot of values and the benefits from the kids playing, and then we keep implementing also the school sport policy, and then also the national sport policy, which is showing the national identification program, how it has to be done, and how we need to have the categories of youth, and then we have also the coaches and everyone involved in the programs.
Thank you very much. Can you share with us, do we have just give us a brief idea, do we have sports academies, training academies? What's going on with the PSG Academy, football academy? Has it been set up? If you could just share with us, on the ground across the country, do we have training academies for young people aspiring to join the sports sector as athletes?
Yeah, we have football academies mainly across the country in different provinces, different locations, and they work directly with the Football Federation, FERWAFA, and we have also other programs in schools of excellence in volleyball, and then also we have basketball, and we have in different sports, other sports that have youth programs, and we have coaches working with the kids. So we are looking with the federations how we have to structure the sport academies so that we know the structure, and then how we'll be monitoring them, and then we know what they are doing and then what they are planning to do in order to implement the policies so we need to streamline the way the sport academies they work, but we have, and for the programs in schools or in the national federations work with the schools in different ways, but also we always request the federation to collaborate and also to be involved in the programs in schools. Regarding the PSG Academy, last 2 months they were doing the selection of kids, and then the academy will be based, according to what we have agreed with PSG, the academy will be based in Huye, and then they were doing the selection of kids, and there are around 295 kids participated in the selection, and then the coaches that will be working with the PSG Academy are still working on the selection of the boys and girls that will be in the program, which will be open very soon.
That's good to hear.
Can I say something on that, Dana?
Sure.
So, Rwanda is never short of such amazing initiatives. And when you asked the PS Shema about academies and initiatives, a few years ago, the government of Rwanda signed, I think, an MOU with the Ministry of Public Service and WDA to run an extremely impressive program at the IPRC in IPRC Kigali, what used to be a Tokichukirand. There were a few sports disciplines, I think, to the best of my knowledge, and PS kindly correct me in case I err here. Tennis, football, cricket, I think volleyball,
basketball,
and basketball. And yes, in 5 sports disciplines.
Yeah.
Boys and girls. And IPRC was very well organized in terms of providing for them the accommodation and whatever. And the logic was very, very simple. You can only play sport for as long, but you're selected on the basis of your sporting talent. But even beyond your sporting days, you should be able to have another skill. So they would have a TVET skill. Like you're a mason, or you can stitch nets, football nets, or you can be a mechanic of cars, and so on and so forth. Now, herein lies the problem, that the ecosystem of ensuring that this wonderful plan is put to execution is where we fall off. Yes, so and we invest so much time, so much resources, and so on and so forth in these amazing programs. We have very good talent. One of I may sound a little bit biased when I talk about tennis, but the talent that has come out of IPRC from a tennis perspective has been extremely impressive. But you ask yourself, what next for some of these players? We've just come out of a Davis Cup competition in tennis, and you only have one guy out of the IPRC after 4 years who's in that bracket. We just, the girls, there's hardly any. So the follow-up does not seem to be commensurate with the investment. And I can almost understand what the PS is saying in terms of the coordination, because maybe when they get to IPRC, the school curriculum keeps them in school so much. Maybe the government of Rwanda does not have the adequate coaches to say this is how you should eat if you're going to be a professional basketballer who has a government scholarship studying in IPRC. Maybe we don't have people teaching the right skills of how to present yourself as a professional volleyballer when you're in IPRC, and maybe it's just blackboard and spiking and being a mechanic. So the all-round skills, I think, were not very well thought of.
A sort of holistic approach.
The holistic approach.
Yes.
Do we have the skills nationally? Definitely not. Do we have the resources to mobilize the skills to present a holistic professional? Probably not. And I think I don't want to put any blame on the ministry, but it's sort of a lesson to us that such amazing initiatives should not be discarded because of their importance. And it brings me to my second point related to Bana's question on the events that we've hosted and the statistics of which she was asking the PS. You see, when you have a huge event like Tour du Rwanda, for example, that has risen in the UCI rankings, and UCI is the International Federation of Cycling. You want that the entire ecosystem is able to tap off those hundreds of riders who have come in with their teams. Even if it is one rider alone, he'll have at least 10 people. And you make sure that they leave every penny in this country. On Sunday last week, I was at Pilipili with some guests, and I eavesdropped a conversation from some Ivorians.
It's bad.
Yeah. They were complaining in loud voices. I had no option. About something as simple as cab drivers whom they could not communicate to in French. Then you can't blame entertainment because of COVID. Yeah, so that's on the one side. And then they had another problem of waiters and waitresses wherever they were going.
In terms of customer service.
In the terms of customer service. So now here we are talking about preparing the talent that we have for the international stage. We're having issues in the way we are preparing it. But now the talent has arrived at the international stage because the infrastructure is there at the international stage. But we are also not yet ready for that, for that international stage. So I think, to use your own words, Diana, the holistic approach has to be very, very seriously looked into. It's not Mini-Spock's problem only. It's not RCB's problem only. It's not the cab drivers associations only. We sort of have to find a way in which we communally squeeze this.
Or the hospitality association only. Yes, very, very quickly, Brenda. Yes.
I feel that Charles is being very
polite.
Yes, polite because of
speak it as it is.
Yeah, but the ecosystem, until we fix it, it doesn't matter how many games. We will end up in negatives. We may enjoy the trends, because usually when there's a game, there's a lot of activity on Twitter, and that's it. But that's not what we want. We want revenue. Yeah, and he points to that kind of ecosystem. I'll give an example of media. If you look at the coverage of the tournaments we have had so far, and let's not talk about the foreign teams, let's talk about the Rwandan team. Where are the profiles of these players? You don't see them.
I think unless it's Kenneth Kasana or Aristide Mugabe or the latest one in volleyball, we don't really know who our sports talent
we don't know.
Are. Yeah,
we don't know, and also going to the detail of the critical commentary that is needed. Yeah, I'm sorry, but most of our sports journalists are fans, not journalists. So most of the time they're just cheering on and they're forgetting their job of actually providing the insight that the audience needs. So until we build an ecosystem that ties into whatever we're trying to do, we will end up with just tweets and we make noise and then that's it. There's no return. I'll give another example. Now, it's COVID, of course, perhaps it was difficult, but ideally you would expect, for instance, meet and greet. You have the stars around town. Even before COVID, we were not seeing that meet and greet when you have the stars around the town. And you have fans that, would be willing. We've also mentioned the issue of merchandise.
Merch, yep.
You still don't find it.
During BAL, the merchandising, the stuff that was supposed to be merchandised came a day to the end of the tournament.
There's that. And most recently, there's a man called Mutabazi who became a hit. I would have expected someone to quickly print some T-shirts and sell them.
But the guy with the towel sold, the pink towels was more popular than Mutabazi.
Yeah, and so...
Yes.
I want to throw it back to the ministry because they are the custodian, really. Yeah, so they need to give direction.
Directive.
Yeah, they need to give direction. Call the private sector, pitch to the private sector and say, we think you can sponsor our teams and this is why, Yeah, so I would throw it back to the Ministry of Sports. Beyond that, the schools, again, it's so important. I hate it that I know more foreign players. Like, look at the lady, the young girl who won the US Open.
Raducanu.
I also know Coco. So we have to find a way of, beyond the events, really getting people to specialize. We were talking about Asha. My colleague, yes, how good she is at almost every sport. Can we have that?
Yes.
We still have...
How good she is as a commentator.
Yes. We still have many Rwandan journalists that are better at foreign games than our domestic, players.
They're football journalists.
Yeah, so...
We need to do better.
The ecosystem, yeah, it's so
ecosystem.
important. Yeah.
And how we also address, whether it's commentary, whether it's merchandising, whether it's commercializing, events around the event, absolutely. Piers, I would like to go to you. If you could briefly, if you have any feedback on what Brenna and Charles have said, just briefly, and then we go to the next part of the discussion, which is to do with governance issues. Over to you, PS.
Okay, thank you very much. I think what I can say is that the development of sport, it is a process, and we believe that we are on a good track, because I think Charles has been leading a national federation. He knows where we came from in the last 20 years and the last 10 years, and then compare today. And what we are now living in our sports sector, it is different to what we have been doing in the last 5 years. So it means the process we are getting in, we are setting standards, we are setting as you are saying, the ecosystem which is bringing everyone and making sport on different level with different dimensions, where we need to have sport which is professional, the sport which is bringing business to everyone involved. You can have a player, but we need also a manager, we need an agent, we need a physiotherapist, we need a lot of people around which are paid by sport. And having that, it is a process. It is not you wake up in a minute and then you say you are on the level of professional sport. And looking with the young talent we have, I think we need also to be in sports so that we understand where our athletes are from. Because as I want to mention it before, but I can mention that if you see in our leagues, we don't have a player with 50 years old. We always have new talent coming in. You can see like Wilson, you see in basketball playing. Me, I know him personally where he came from, because I started with him in 2010, and he was in P5, I think. But day after day, I was looking him how he was developing. So we have other athletes also. We can testimony how they have been. They have grown up in sport with their talents, but I think what we can say that the ecosystem, to be the ecosystem in sport, it is not one day. And the process is on a good track, and we can assure you that it will be on a good level in a few years, as I can see how we are progressing, everyone coming in, national federations complying, and now the parents are now understanding the sports sector, because before we were saying I'm going to play, and then they say no, don't go, you go first to school. But now we are combining school and sport, and then we think everyone will be involved, and then that will also bring us on a good level.
Thank you. I wanted to just touch quickly on the issue of governance and structural issues. We've discussed this before on the show with other people from sports bodies, and you're here on behalf of the ministry. PS, if you could share with us the issue of governance issues. Earlier on this year we had resignations of, abrupt resignations of people who headed various federations in the country, such as the Football Federation and the National Olympic Committee. The Cycling Federation, FEROC, has been plagued with allegations of, corruption, sexual abuse, resource mismanagement, and also in-house fighting. And sometimes I feel this leads to the federations not being able to focus on their jobs and grow the sports industry. In your opinion, what is being done, or what can be done to deal with this issue in terms of solving governance issues that impact, the overall sports performance in Rwanda?
Yeah, I think what we can say is that the governance in sport is particular, and we need everyone involved in sport governance to understand how the organizations they operate, and how the rules, regulations are in place, and the people need to work in line with everything in their governance. It is really unfortunate that we have people coming in leadership in sports, and what they do in their daily life, in their business, they don't want to do the same in sport organizations, and that brings complaints, issues in the house, as you are saying, and also it cannot even help to have the promotion of sport and the development of young talents. From there, we have, as you are saying, resignation and the people that say that they cannot continue because they are not complying with the regulations and also promoting the sport they are in charge. So that the main reasons, and I think it is understandable, and we need to have the sport governance which is also following the example of our leadership of the country, so that we know we are working for the sector, we are working for the sport, and then we are also working for our beneficiaries in terms of developing the talent and also promoting the sport we are in charge.
Thank you very much.
Can I make a comment on governance?
But just very quickly, I know Brenna had an issue she was dying to share. If you can both make it brief, because I'd like us to go back to a Twitter feed. Brenna, just quickly over to you.
No, as he was speaking about the plans and the ecosystem, I was just thinking about the livelihood of our sports men and women. Most of them, as far as I know, combine jobs outside sports to,
Absolutely.
Yeah, so someone is, I think, I know Aristide is an accountant,
yes,
and then he plays basketball. But what you really need, people who do sports full-time, And for that to happen, you need the money to be coming into sports that can support them.
And allow them to be fully concentrating on sports.
On sports.
I hear you. Yeah. Charles?
I'm glad she's brought that up, because that's one of the biggest issues around our governance gaps in sports. As a former sports administrator, still involved in one or another, and Shema will bear witness with me on this, every sports administrator has to dig deep into their pockets and also deep into their time to run their respective clubs or associations. Now, what usually happens is that, one, that is not told to them before they get in, when they sign up.
It's not what they signed up for.
No, it's not what they sign up for. They don't sign up to take salary advances, to pay rent for a star player.
Yes.
So who are you to come and talk to me about the millions?
How to run your federation.
Yes, yet I have spent millions on a coach. So
that's a governance issue.
Yes, it's a very, very big governance issue. And Shema actually says it that we probably need to borrow a very good leaf from our political system. That historically, and I give an example of I don't know about you girls, but the political party I belong to, RPF.
You always say that.
People have been taught that the resources that you have are beyond yourself. Yes, so you always have to look at the bigger picture in mind. Now, what happens is that today, fast forward, what has happened is because that we now have the resources, people are saying, no, let me pay myself first. A guy will pay, the example he has given about Wilson of basketball. If Shema was still involved in basketball, and I'm just giving Shema as an example, please don't take this offensively, he'll probably say, the money that Wilson is bringing in, let me first pay myself since I'm the one who got him there. So that is a very, very serious challenge that we have.
Absolutely, a governance issue.
Because all sports administrators pay.
They sacrifice.
They sacrifice their time and a lot of their time and a lot of their money.
But in the long run, that comes back to the performance, because it comes back to governance issues. Because when someone puts checks and balances there, they will kind of undermine them based on the fact that they did things that they didn't sign up for.
The challenge is you have to make up a personal decision from the onset
and not
that you're not going to expect a monetary reward.
I want us to
Charles,
just very quickly, Brenna.
Yes.
Just to clarify, from where I stand, I feel like sports governance is a global problem, like everywhere.
Absolutely.
Why?
I think that's another discussion for another day.
It's because there's also, of course, another issue. There's too much
Yes.
money involved as well.
And also issues of sacrifice and putting yourself forward and not expecting monetary returns other than what's been put forward for you. We have a tweet coming in that I would like us to read before we close, and it goes to the ministry. And this person, Prosper, says, if my comment gets lucky enough to be read, what are you, Sports Ministry, planning for Rwanda cricket as an emerging sport to grow big? Will you be there again to support men's national team in World Cup qualifier this October? Thank you for your relentless support. In closing, P.S., can you answer that question?
I think cricket is one of the sports that are supported. As we have the Gahanga Cricket Stadium. The government has worked with the federation to get the stadium. That first, how we are promoting cricket. And secondly, we work with the National Federation or Association of Cricket in different activities, and we look more to have activities with them because they have tournaments coming in, bringing people as Rwanda for its destination for cricket. And in the program we are working with the Cricket Association, and we believe the question of our colleague will be answered through the activities we are doing.
Thank you. Last tweet for the day is from Edmund Kagire, who says that if you could have this on our screens, I cannot agree more with Barna Namata and Charles Harbour. We need to do more beyond #Visit Rwanda. There must be investment in developing talent right from the grassroots. The North Africans have showed us how. Otherwise, results will always be the same. We've come to the end of our show. P.S. I would like to, P.S. I would like to thank you. If we could have our camera on the P.S. I would like to thank you so much for joining us. It's been an honor to have you on behalf of the ministry.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I appreciate that you took time for us in sport.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Charles, hold your comment right now. We'll have it next week or tweet it. Keep the conversation going on using #TheSquareRW. Thank you so much for your views. Thank you to the Ministry of Sports for allocating their time. I know it's very busy. There's the African Nations Championships in volleyball going on, and we had them here today. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you, Barna Namata and Charles Harbour. Thank you very much. Have a good night. See you again next week.